Bonjour, bienvenue à notre rendez-vous quotidien pour la presse en ligne et en direct sur EBS. Nous sommes aujourd'hui le mardi 2 mars. Pour commencer, suite à la réunion hebdomadaire des chefs de cabinet, je peux vous confirmer l'agenda du collège pour demain et les événements de presse attenants. Demain donc, le collège adoptera une communication qui vise à fournir aux États membres des orientations générales en matière de politique budgétaire au cours de la période à venir. Pour cette occasion, le vice-président exécutif Valdis Dombrovskis et le commissaire Paolo Gentiloni viendront en salle de presse pour vous présenter le compte-rendu du collège et ce dossier en particulier. Le collège adoptera aussi une communication sur une stratégie pour les droits des personnes handicapées 2021-2030. Après le compte-rendu du collège demain, la commissaire Elena Dalli présentera cette communication ici en salle de presse. Puis, le collège discutera un plan d'action sur le socle de droits sociaux et une recommandation concernant un soutien actif et efficace à l'emploi à la suite de la pandémie. Ces deux dossiers vous seront présentés par le vice-président exécutif Valdis Dombrovskis et le commissaire Nicolas Schmitt jeudi matin, ici en salle de presse. Et finalement, le collège discutera une proposition de directive pour renforcer l'application du principe de l'égalité de rémunération pour un même travail ou un travail de même valeur ou de valeur égale entre hommes et femmes. Ceci sera présenté par la vice-présidente Vera Jourova et la commissaire Elena Dalli jeudi dans l'après-midi ici en salle de presse. Then, moving on to the video conferences of the day, trade ministers are meeting at the moment and Executive Vice President Dombrovskis is participating on behalf of the Commission. The ministers are exchanging views on the European Commission's recent communication on the trade policy review. The Executive Vice President will take part in the press conference that is foreseen at 12:30, and therefore we ask you to save your questions on trade for this press event. And with this, we are ready to take your questions, and I give the floor to James.
Good afternoon, Eric. James FRANEY, Daily Mail. You will have seen overnight that Austria and Denmark have signed a vaccine, or about to sign, I should say, a vaccine production deal with Israel. Two questions, if I could. Doesn't this just show that it's better to go it alone when you're looking to protect your own citizens? And I'm wondering what lessons the European Commission itself could learn from the Israeli government when it comes to the handling of vaccines and so on. Thank you.
Thank you. Question for Stefan?
Thank you very much, James. Good afternoon. You know that the vaccine rollout, the delivery of the production and delivery of vaccines is a project that comes with a lot of obstacles. We have developed I think, a successful vaccine strategy. But several steps have been taken to, for instance, better tackle the variants which are out there and which are extremely important to tackle, but also to ramp up production capacities. This is one of the reasons why the Commission has established the HERA incubator, and we have a task force following up on the development and the strengthening of production capacities. What is important for us, it's always good to learn from good practice in other countries and to explore opportunities for cooperation. Let's not forget that the COVID-19 virus requires a global response and that lessons from other countries are very helpful here. So the Commission would be definitely interested in learning from Austria, Denmark and Israel that add value to the EU vaccine strategy and to the mission of the HERA incubator, which benefits all member states. Thank you.
Follow-up, James.
Yeah, just a quick one, if I could, Stefan. So you say it's important to learn lessons. My question was, what lessons have you learned from the Israeli rollout? Thank you.
I think I think it's a little bit early at this stage. Again, the COVID virus is a virus that has struck the whole world. It is important that we see what are the different approaches that are being followed in the different parts of the world. And again, it would be useful to learn lessons from contacts with these other regions, such as Israel. But for the time being, I don't think I can add anything concrete or specific to that at this stage. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We stay on the issue of vaccines and vaccination strategy for the moment, so please only keep your hand raised if you have questions on this. And we move to Peter, or Peter, rather. You need to change your mic source, I am told. Yes, go ahead. Yes, go ahead.
Sorry?
Go ahead, Peter.
Well, didn't
Peter.
change anything. Okay, fine. We heard comments by Austrian Chancellor Sebastian Kurz that the EU, that it would not be wise for Austria and Denmark now to rely on the EU exclusively as a partner in the vaccination drive, especially when it comes to a second generation of vaccines. So in that light, how do you rate the initiative that's been undertaken now between Denmark, Austria and Israel?
I think I refer to what I just said. We are interested in learning from this mission from Austria, Denmark and Israel, which could add value to the EU vaccine strategy. I can also refer to the letter to the President of the European Council, Mr. Charles Michel, last week, which was co-signed by the Danish Prime Minister, for instance, which shows that such efforts are not competing, but indeed mutually reinforcing. So it's in that spirit that we look at the mission which lies ahead of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Peter, you have a follow-up.
Not be relied upon fully when it comes to second generation of vaccines, if you regard initiatives like these as being potentially useful.
We didn't get the beginning of your question, Peter. It's important to wait
important
before you start speaking until the mic is on. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Do you agree with the view that the EU cannot be relied upon fully as a partner in the vaccinations when it comes to development of a second generation of vaccines?
As you know, we never comment on other comments. We have a strategy that is being rolled out. We have presented plans for the HERA incubator, which is the EU's strategy to tackle, in particular, the appearance of variants, and would be a sort of stepping stone towards HERA, the Health Emergency Response agency that we would then set up. This proposal has been welcomed by the member states, and as Stefan referred to, indeed, in a letter in particular by specific leaders, including those we are speaking about now. And therefore, we believe that what is important is that we work in this context to ensure that we can quickly identify variants, develop the proper health response, including new vaccines or variants on the vaccines, adaptations of the vaccines, and then roll them out. This is what we're focusing on, and we certainly hope that we will be very successful in cooperation with the member states, with industry, with regulators, and with the health system. JILLIAN.
Hi, Eric and Stefan. Thanks so much for taking my questions. My questions are also about the EU's vaccination strategy and recent criticism against it. I know you guys don't want to comment on what EU leaders have said about the EU's vaccination strategy, but some of the recent comments from EU leaders are quite stark and I believe warrant a response. We see that the Hungarian Prime Minister Orban has said that Hungarians are dying waiting for EU-made vaccines. Kurz has said that Austria should not be dependent on the EU for second-generation vaccines. And Poland's president told his Chinese counterpart that he wants to buy Chinese vaccines. I mean, does this mean that EU leaders have lost faith in the EU's joint approach, or at the very least that they were not reassured by what they heard at Thursday's video summit? I was also curious, Stefan mentioned obstacles in rolling out vaccines. But in Slovakia, we've seen, giant boxes of Sputnik vaccine arriving. Does the Commission have a message for citizens whose national leaders are complaining that Brussels is just too slow? Thank you.
Stefan.
Thank you very much, Jillian. Let me start with the second thing. You know that we have established our common vaccine strategy. It's a common effort of all member states together with the Commission to establish a diversified portfolio. This portfolio now consists of already 3 companies that have had the green light from EMA, meaning that EMA has checked the safety and efficacy of these vaccines, and these 3 companies are now in the process of producing around 1.5 billion doses. So that's a lot of doses, and we are confident that by the summer of this year, we should be in a position to reach the EU target of 70% for vaccinations. So we have supply lines that we're working on very hard with the Commission and with the member states to make this possible. We know that some member states are interested in working with vaccines which fall outside of the portfolio. We have already discussed this on many occasions in the context of this press room. You know that as far as vaccines are concerned outside of the portfolio, member states may indeed take the decision to work with them. As far as we're concerned, we always insisted on the importance of effectiveness and safety of vaccines, therefore the importance of going through EMA. But again, we believe that with the portfolio that we have developed, consisting of now 1.5 billion doses being produced, that we should be able to cover the needs of our European citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. We continue on the issue of health and vaccination. Mose, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you very much, Eric. I would also like to go back to a question, to the first question Stefan received about which lessons learned can be learned from other countries, in this case Israel, when it comes to the rollout of vaccinations. And I would be surprised to hear that it's been too early to learn such lessons, because the rollout in Israel has now been taking place for about 2 months. And what was very special was that was the logistics and the use of existing healthcare or maintenance companies or sick insurance companies, which had an organization in place for the vaccinations. And that seems to be the problem in many EU member states when it comes to that. Also here in Belgium, I understand. So my question is still, is not time for the Commissions really to learn these lessons and perhaps to issue some kind of guidance to the member states how to make this organization for vaccinations more effective? Thank you.
Mose, let's not put the cart before the horses here. The fact is that we are in the middle of the rollout of vaccines and vaccination strategies across the EU. European Union, which I would remind you, has 450 million inhabitants and not somewhere around 10 million like Israel. So it's, you need to keep a sense of proportions in terms of the challenge that we face compared to one specific country. And secondly, the European Union is composed of 27 different member states, which have extremely different structures, be it administrative, be it healthcare systems, be it population density, etc., etc. So it's not as if you can take one model and simply put it, stick it on the European Union and say this is what you should be doing. That's the first point. The second point is that, as you rightly pointed out yourself, vaccination strategies are a responsibility of member states. How they actually roll out the vaccinations is something that each member state is in charge of. And there are discussions between member states on this. They have defined priority groups, etc., etc. But it is their responsibility, and they discuss this in specific committees, the Health Security Committee, as Stefan has been saying. As far as the European Union is concerned, when it comes to responsibilities that we have been exercising, we have already drawn many lessons. This is precisely why we set up the task force with Commissioner Breton to look at all the ways in which we can ramp up production. This is why we came forward with a proposal on the HERA incubator, in order to make sure that we could, as quickly as possible, deal with variants. And this is why we have proposed to move forward on a health union with, in particular, the setting up of a health emergency response agency. So clearly, it's not as if we were not looking at what's happening across the board. We're looking at what's happening everywhere among our partners to see what it is that we can do better. But there are some things which are the responsibility of the European Union, others which are the responsibility of member states. And of course, we encourage member states to look at best practices everywhere as well. Let's continue. Marco.
Merci Eric. J'ai une question sur l'annonce que la présidente de la Commission vient de faire ce matin, mais qui avait déjà fait, et c'est lié à la possibilité que l'Agence européenne des médicaments pourrait accélérer les procédures pour l'approbation des vaccins. Je voulais juste savoir si là on parle de toutes les nouvelles approbations qu'on aura dans les prochains mois et semaines, ou si cette procédure accélérée s'appliquerait seulement aux vaccins qui doivent s'adapter aux mutations. Et si je peux, une deuxième question. Jeudi, la présidente a dit que Apple et Google sont déjà en train de négocier avec l'Organisation mondiale du commerce pour le Green Passport, le passeport de vaccin, mais je crois que ça a été démenti par l'Organisation mondiale du commerce. Donc, si vous pouvez clarifier ça. Merci.
Merci beaucoup. Je pense qu'en ce qui concerne la proposition d'introduire des flexibilités qui permettent d'accélérer l'approbation des vaccins, l'idée était d'être plus rapide lorsqu'il s'agit de pouvoir adopter des autorisations pour des vaccins qui doivent aussi adresser les variantes. Souvent, pour éviter que les producteurs de ces vaccins doivent reprendre la procédure dès le début, le but de cette flexibilité serait d'accélérer l'approbation, en effet, en essayant en permettant la soumission de certaines dates, ou de certaines données, plutôt, excusez-moi, certaines données qui rendraient ensuite l'approbation plus facile. Donc, pour éviter que tout doit recommencer dès le début, parce qu'il s'agit souvent, dans la pratique, de modifications de vaccins existants pour lesquels il y a déjà toute une série d'éléments et de données scientifiques qui sont disponibles. Je pense que ça, c'était l'idée derrière l'accélération des procédures d'approbation. Merci.
Oui, merci. Et sur ta deuxième question, ce sur quoi la présidente voulait mettre l'accent, c'était le fait qu'on avait vu dans le contexte des applications de suivi, the Tracing Act, comme on dit en anglais, que bien entendu les entreprises technologiques sont évidemment sur la brèche et proposent des solutions, et que si nous souhaitons qu'il y ait une solution européenne standardisée qui émerge, il fallait que nous nous mettions au travail. Et d'après les informations que nous avons, il y a des experts de compagnies tech qui sont en train de travailler avec l'OMS sur la question des certificats de vaccination, mais pas au nom de l'entreprise, mais à titre privé. Et effectivement, il se peut que qu'il n'y ait pas d'experts travaillant chez Apple qui fassent partie de ces groupes. Donc il s'agissait visiblement d'un malentendu. Mais il y a effectivement des experts de compagnies de tech qui travaillent avec l'OMS sur ces questions. Okay, let's continue. We go to Mads. You need to check your mic source, please.
I believe.
Yes, now it's
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yeah.
now it's working.
Perfect. I just wanted to go back to the first question, basically about Israel, because have also signaled
We've lost
that
you,
they
Mads.
would
Sorry,
like
you
to-
need to start again. You were broken off
Sorry.
for a second.
I was saying that Denmark and Austria have also signaled that they would like to procure extra vaccine doses from Israel. At least the Danish Prime Minister has said as much. I would like to know if that's allowed within the EU's vaccine procurement strategy, especially seeing it as that would be a vaccine that's also in the EU's portfolio.
Mads, I believe we have answered that question around 1,000 times, but we'll be happy to reiterate.
Okay, so thank you very much for this. But, you know, we have our vaccine strategy. The vaccine strategy covers vaccines for 6 companies. And as you know, we are in negotiation with 2 other companies. The principle behind this vaccine strategy is that we do the negotiations together. That means Commission and Member States together negotiations. And so no parallel negotiations for the same vaccines which are covered by our vaccine strategy. When we're talking about vaccines which are falling outside the vaccine strategy, then there is nothing in the vaccine strategy that would prevent member states from having discussions or talks or contracts with such vaccine developers. Our vaccine strategy concerns the different, the 6 vaccines and 2 vaccine developers with whom we're currently discussing. Thank you.
Matt, follow-up.
Yeah, thank you so much. I suppose, yes, we agree that Denmark would not be allowed to go out and buy, for example, Pfizer vaccines directly from Pfizer unless they were delivered after. That's what I understand. But then Denmark or another country could then circumvent this by buying them through a third party, such as Israel, is my question.
Listen, it's very difficult to comment on that because we don't know exactly what, we cannot comment on comments, I would say. We cannot speculate either. The vaccine strategy is quite clear. We have contracts with 6 companies, soon perhaps 8 companies. And what the idea is that we do not undermine the joint effort of this vaccine strategy by having parallel negotiations or contracts with these vaccine developers for the vaccines covered by our vaccine strategy. But I don't think I can go into speculation of the kind that you refer to. Thank you.
Indeed not. We will stick to you know, the facts as we know them. We're not going to speculate on further developments. Yanis.
Hi, good morning. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, go ahead.
Great. Yanis Palaiologos from FRANEY. I have a question about the speeding up of the national rollouts and the AstraZeneca vaccine specifically. Given that the EMA approved it for all ages and that new data keeps coming in that shows that it is effective among older people, and given the fact that you know, a number of countries are beginning to alter their approach and that huge numbers of doses have remained unused so far, does the Commission have a position about whether national vaccine strategies should be changed so that they do allow for vaccination to include people over 55 or over 65 with the specific vaccine? Thanks.
Thank you very much, Yanis. What the European Medicines Agency is doing is checking the safety and the effectiveness of the vaccine. And on the basis of that, it issues an opinion. In the context of the AstraZeneca vaccine, no specific age groups have been identified by EMA, meaning that it's considered by EMA to be safe and effective. Now, this does not prevent member states from submitting the use of the vaccine to stricter rules if they want to. Of course, member states should always respect the recommendation, the opinion of the European Medicines Agency, which is then reflected in the market authorization by the Commission. But member states may impose stricter rules on the use of a vaccine on the basis of the specific needs and circumstances in each member state. Let's not forget that vaccination and vaccination programs remains a national competence, and so member states may have reasons to believe that they want to submit the use of vaccines to additional rules, but again, as I said, never against what has been decided or rather put in the opinion by the European Medicines Agency. Thank you.
Thank you. We move to Verena.
Yes, thanks for the question. I wanted to go back to the EMA procedures. Austria has repeatedly criticized the length of those procedures and asked for speeding them up. And in your HERA communication, you raised the possibility of emergency authorization on the European level. I was wondering if you could update us on the reactions of the member states and if this is still an option. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. As far as an emergency authorization is concerned, we are ready to reflect with the member states on all possible avenues to indeed accelerate the approval of the vaccines. One such option or possibility could indeed be having the option of such an emergency authorization of vaccines at EU level with shared liability among member states. If member states are interested, we will start working on a proposal to present very quickly. But of course, what remains very important is safety and effectiveness. That should remain at the core of the work. Thank you.
Thank you. We continue. Ole.
Yes, thank you, Eric. Two questions on vaccines again. One, as a follow-up to the Danish Austrian trip to Israel. First question is, have you seen any signs of any of the 27 EU countries announcing that they do not want to continue the cooperation on the EU vaccine strategy? I know it was discussed at the summit last week. So basically, do you see any countries going it alone, or is what the countries are doing an addition to what the EU countries are doing already? And secondly, to follow up on that, is the question is, do you see any problems in countries like Austria and Denmark creating vaccine cooperation with countries outside of the EU in terms of production, research, and the like? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think there's always been a very strong support for the joint approach of the vaccine strategy, consisting of based on cooperation and coordination between the member states. It's this joint cooperation that has led to the establishment of a portfolio of 2.5 billion doses, and it has led to the production now of 1.5 billion doses of 3 companies whose vaccine has been approved by EMA. So there's been, I think, a strong support for the cooperation. That's one thing. Second, going alone. I can reiterate what I said before. The vaccine strategy is focused on a certain portfolio, a diversified portfolio of different companies using different technologies. But member states, and that was clear from the beginning, always have the possibility to conclude other contracts for vaccines outside of the vaccine strategy. This was always possible, so it's not because such things are considered by member states that this would mean that the strategy is no longer effective. The strategy has led, as I just said, to 1.5 billion doses being produced now. As far as links as work is concerned with countries outside the European Union, I can again reiterate what I said before. It is this COVID virus is a pandemic that strikes the whole world, so not just the European member states, not just the European Union, but the whole world. So lessons that we can learn from different approaches from different parts of the world are always very welcome and important. Thank you.
Thank you. Raf.
Afternoon. Ole already asked pretty much what I also wanted to ask, and my question basically was, so in that sense, you do not think it undermines the EU strategy in one bit if 2 countries like this take an initiative like it does with Israel?
Raf, the point is that none of the member states has signaled in any way that they want to receive less doses based on our EU vaccination vaccine strategy. They all want to continue to be part of this. What certain member states are looking at is how to prepare the future. This is what I understand has been said by the leaders that we have been discussing. In particular, in terms of preparation for the variants, which is also something on which we are working. That's the state of play that we're on. So we will continue with our vaccine strategy exactly as before and continue to adapt as the situation evolves. Balázs. It seems we have an issue with your mic source.
maybe now you can hear me.
Yes, absolutely. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm Balázs Litovski from Hungarian RTL News. And my question is about the vaccination certificate. According to new Hungarian regulation, the Hungarian vaccination certificate will not contain the type of the vaccine. Is this against the directives accepted by the member states at the end of January, and will this regulation cause a conflict creating a common certificate? And last question, what could be the consequences of this regulation for the Hungarian citizens in the European Union? Thank you.
Thank you. We move to Johannes on this issue.
Yes, thank you for the question. I think it's way too early to say anything on that. It is correct, as you say, that the guidelines that were discussed in the eHealth network among the member states contain, for the minimum data set, several elements, and one of them is the type of vaccine. That is correct. But as you know, the discussions continue in the eHealth network on the next level, what we call the trust framework, to put in place a system that allows authentication, that allows mutual recognition and interoperability of these certificates, and these talks are ongoing, so there's nothing else we can say at this stage. Thank you.
Thank you. We move to Christian.
C'est moi que tu appelles? Tu m'entends?
Absolument, Christian.
Ok, oui, on est devenu très british chez vous.
Désolé.
Non, mais je t'en veux pas, c'est pas grave. Je voudrais revenir sur un petit point de la petite phrase de Stéphane. Quand il a dit qu'effectivement, l'Union européenne a décidé de travailler avec des entreprises pour des vaccins qui soient efficaces, sûrs pour les campagnes de vaccination. Est-ce que ça sous-entend qu'effectivement les vaccins russes et chinois, qui font tant de convoitises aujourd'hui, vous ne les considérez pas sûrs et efficaces? Je veux dire, c'est vrai qu'ils n'ont absolument rien soumis à l'autorité, à l'agence pour le médicament. Donc est-ce que vous considérez que tout ce qui n'a pas reçu de feu vert de l'EMA, c'est pas très crédible et qu'il faut manier avec prudence? Ce qui ramène à ma deuxième question, qui est la question de la confiance. Le AstraZeneca a été, on pourrait dire, plombé par les doutes qui ont été émis en Allemagne, en France, en Belgique, sur les risques que cela pouvait représenter pour la tranche d'âge des 55 et plus. Aujourd'hui, certains pays reviennent en disant non, finalement, on s'est trompé, mais la confiance est brisée. Moi, je suis dans la tranche des 55 et plus. Et je me demande si effectivement AstraZeneca, c'est un bon vaccin pour moi. Et cette question, je ne suis certainement pas le seul à me la poser. Et ma troisième petite question, j'ai lu sous la plume d'excellents confrères aujourd'hui qu'Israël vaccinait avec le Pfizer. Donc quel est l'intérêt pour des États membres d'aller chercher auprès d'un pays tiers un vaccin qui est fabriqué en Allemagne et produit en Belgique? Merci.
Sur la troisième question, je pense qu'il faut que tu t'adresses à ces deux États membres pour savoir quel est l'intérêt pour eux. Nous avons, signé des contrats, 2 contrats avec BioNTech Pfizer pour la livraison de centaines de millions de doses de vaccins dans l'Union européenne. Ces doses sont en train d'être livrées et nous pensons effectivement que c'est la bonne voie à suivre en complément de l'ensemble des autres vaccins que nous sommes en train d'acheter ou que nous avons déjà achetés, ou plutôt des entreprises avec lesquelles nous avons signé des accords de préachat. Je passe la parole à Stéphane sur les 2 premières questions.
Merci beaucoup, Christian. Ce n'est pas parce qu'on dit que l'EMA vérifie la sûreté et l'efficacité d'un vaccin qu'un vaccin qui n'a pas été évalué par EMA est donc par conséquent pas sûr et pas efficace. Ce serait pas une conclusion logique, je pense, de ce que je viens de dire. Ce que j'ai dit, c'est que l'Union européenne, les États membres et les commissions ont insisté dès le début sur l'importance d'avoir un contrôle très approfondi des vaccins. D'abord parce que le vaccin doit être en effet sûr et efficace, mais aussi pour pouvoir démontrer aux citoyens européens que le vaccin qui est injecté est en effet sûr et efficace et qu'ils ne doivent pas avoir peur de participer dans la vaccination. Donc, ce contrôle via l'EMA nous permet d'avoir cette certitude. Ça ne veut pas pour autant dire que un vaccin qui n'a pas suivi cela ne serait pas sûr efficace, mais pour nous, ce qui est important, c'est d'avoir eu cette évaluation. Donc ça, c'est une première chose. En ce qui concerne le vaccin AstraZeneca, l'agence EMA a donné son opinion. Dans son opinion, l'agence a considéré que le vaccin est en effet sûr et efficace. Ils n'ont pas fait cette distinction d'âge. Et donc, nous suivons évidemment cette approche scientifique de l'EMA qui fait, comme tu le sais, une évaluation très approfondie de tous les aspects liés justement à la sûreté et l'efficacité de ce vaccin. Et donc, c'est un vaccin qui, sur base de l'EMA, est tout à fait sûr et efficace et qui peut être certainement pris. Ça va. Merci.
Merci. Nous continuons sur la stratégie vaccin, la stratégie de vaccination. Ekrem.
Thank you, Eric. My question is about the COVID passport or certificate. What is the Commission intended to propose for those people, for example, who are vaccinated, but for whatever reason they test positive before the travel date? I'm asking the question because if I recall well, Pfizer, for example, has said publicly a few months ago that its vaccine can be effective only for 6 months. So what after 6 months?
Thank you. Those are all issues which need to be tackled. We are in the process, obviously, of working on our proposal, and you will be getting answers on this once our proposal has been put on the table. It's not possible for us at this stage to speculate on the exact details of a proposal which is currently being drafted. Angela.
Yes, good morning. Thanks, Eric. You were saying before that member states can legitimately act as Austria and Denmark are acting for the future work on the variants. I was wondering if this could change or will change the approach of the Commission with the variants. In the future, will it be the same? I mean, the Commission signing contracts for all member states, also for the variants, or this new attitude by some member states can change the attitude of the Commission as well, or could change its strategy? Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not really sure there is any contradiction here. You know that we have adopted our HERA incubator last week, and several steps have been announced to be very important for us to better tackle the challenges of the variants. One of these includes, for instance, the possibility for the Commission to, together with the member states, to conclude adapted advanced purchase agreements. So the system of advanced purchase agreement is a system that has been very successful in purchasing vaccines and is a tool that is again identified as a successful tool in the context of our HERA incubator. In addition to that, other steps have been taken to make sure that we can address better the variants, and this is the work that we are focusing on now. What is happening here in this initiative is that contacts take place between Austria, Denmark and Israel, and of course, as I said before, the COVID virus being a global virus, whatever lessons that can be learned are always very important to take on board in the context of our response to the variants. Thank you.
Thank you. We move to Samuel.
Thanks, Eric. Just to follow up on the digital green pass, if I may, and the tech companies that could be involved in developing an EU solution. What was exactly meant by the President's comments after UCO last week that this should be a European solution? What does a European solution look like in practice? And does this mean that you will definitely not work with Google or Apple on this project? And if there's anything you can say more broadly on perhaps the technology providers that you are talking to, I'd appreciate it as well. Thank you.
Johannes.
Thank you, Samuel. I think Eric already replied to this partially a little bit earlier during the midday. I mean, the president said that we want a European solution and we need to speed up the work collectively, member states and Commission, because the member states have to implement such a solution in their national health record systems, and only then they can be, interoperable and work with each other. And this is what needs to happen now. The agreement on the system, on the trust framework, and then the implementation in the national health record systems. And this is why she mentioned this, to illustrate that the time is of the essence to move fast now. So it's really, really now for the member states to move forward in their discussions in the health network, which we facilitate. I think this is all I can say. And what we can maybe add is that we are in touch with the international organizations like ICAO, like the World Health Organization, and to see what they are planning and what they're working on. But I cannot confirm contacts with individual companies at this stage. Thank you.
Thank you. David.
Oui, merci Eric. Juste une question à propos des mutations, etc., et vaccins. Est-ce que les deux contrats que vous avez signés, les deux accords que vous avez signés avec Pfizer et Moderna pour 300 et 300 millions de doses en plus peuvent couvrir des doses de vaccins modifiées en fonction des variants?
Merci David. C'est un point sur lequel il faudra que je vérifie les détails, car nous avons effectivement dit que dans le contexte de la lutte contre les variants, nous allions travailler avec les entreprises concernées pour soit signer de nouveaux contrats, soit adapter les contrats. Il faudra que nous revenions vers toi avec les détails spécifiques sur cette question. Ekrem, perhaps I missed a follow-up from you, in which case apologies.
No, it's the same topic, but from a different angle. I'm curious to know about the EU Commission's staff on delegations across the world. Do your people have the right to choose whether they want to be vaccinated, for example, with Russia vaccine and China vaccine? Well, will that be acceptable to the Commission? And if yes, they do so, will they be having deserving the COVID passport to enter in their respective countries in the EU?
Can you, sorry, I'm going to call Balázs on the podium for a general line on vaccination and delegations. Or Nabila? Okay, so I'll have both on the podium. We'll start with Nabila then, and then we'll see. Nabila.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
I'm sorry, but you will need to repeat the question, so because I didn't hear you well, Ekrem. Thank you.
Ekrem, sorry for that. We prefer to hear it again from you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, my question was, if the staff of EC around the world, for example, in this case in Russia and China, decide to be vaccinated with their the vaccines of respective two countries, will that be acceptable to the EU EC headquarters in Brussels? And if yes, if not, in fact, will they be deserving the COVID passport to enter in their respective countries?
Nabila, but the second part of the question, I think, is completely unrelated. We have never talked about a vaccine passport. That's not the point. But Nabila, go ahead.
Yes, indeed. I mean, I cannot answer on the second part, but on the first part, I would the EU staff and the family members will be offered vaccines authorized by the European Medicine Agency, donc EMA in Europe. When there is no local access to an EMA approved vaccine, staff and family members will be vaccinated in the EU. This is to ensure the maximum protection of EU staff posted abroad and equality of treatment with other European citizens. The decision to be vaccinated, however, is an individual decision, which vaccine to get vaccinated with is likewise a personal decision. Therefore, we will not prevent people from being vaccinated with a non-EMA authorized vaccines if this is their personal decision. I hope I answered your question, though.
Thank you very much. Christian.
Sur ce point, vous m'entendez?
Absolument.
Si vous dites qu'effectivement, que le personnel des délégations dans l'Union européenne sera vacciné avec des vaccins certifiés par l'EMA et que si jamais ces vaccins ne sont pas disponibles à Moscou, Pékin ou ailleurs, ils pourront être vaccinés dans l'Union européenne, ça veut quand même dire que vous avez un gros doute sur l'efficacité des vaccins chinois et russes.
Écoute, je ne pense qu'il est absolument normal qu'à partir du moment où l'Union européenne a mis en place une stratégie d'achat de vaccins basée sur un certain nombre de vaccins qui ont été autorisés par l'Agence européenne des médicaments, il est normal que ces vaccins soient ceux qui soient considérés comme étant appropriés pour les citoyens européens en général et le personnel des institutions en particulier. Encore une fois, comme l'a dit Stéphane, il ne faut pas transformer un non positif en négatif. Le fait est que l'Union européenne n'a pas à avoir un avis sur un vaccin, ça n'est pas notre rôle, c'est le rôle de l'Agence européenne du médicament. Et nous, en tant qu'autorité, nous mettons sur le marché, nous autorisons la mise sur le marché d'un vaccin à partir du moment où l'Agence européenne du médicament a donné un avis positif. Ça s'arrête là. Et donc, dans ce contexte-là, il me semble que l'attitude qui est prise est parfaitement logique. Les vaccins pour lesquels nous avons un avis sont ceux pour lesquels l'Agence européenne des médicaments a donné son blanc-seing. Et c'est donc normal que notre stratégie de vaccination par rapport au personnel de l'Union européenne soit basée là-dessus. Okay, I think this brings this chapter to a close. We still have a few minutes before moving on to the press conference. So let's move to other subjects. Je passe la parole à Michaela, qui avait levé la main précédemment.
Bonjour, tu m'entends bien?
Oui, Michaela, vas-y.
Merci. Écoute, apparemment, suite à un vote hier dans la commission jury du Parlement européen, le Parlement a la ferme intention de porter la Commission européenne en justice, puisqu'elle n'a jamais imposé une réciprocité des visas aux États-Unis, qui, eux, par contre, imposent des visas à 4 pays européens de l'Union européenne. Alors, je me demandais si vous auriez une réaction à ça. Voilà, merci.
Merci. Une question pour Adalbert.
Merci beaucoup, Michaela. Pardon, je me réarrange. Donc, pour l'instant, nous n'avons pas de commentaires spécifiques à faire concernant la recommandation de la commission jury du Parlement européen avant que les prochaines étapes soient confirmées. Par ailleurs, je tiens à rappeler que la commissaire Johansson devant la commission jury du Parlement, a expliqué le point de vue de la Commission européenne. Nous avons publié une communication sur la réciprocité des visas en décembre 2020 et la position de la Commission qui a été exprimée à cette occasion-là est que, vu les conséquences substantiellement négatives d'une suspension des visas qui serait attendue à la fois pour les relations entre l'Union européenne et les États-Unis et pour tous les citoyens européens, une approche qui consisterait à adopter un acte délégué dans le sens d'une suspension des visas serait contre-productive. Par ailleurs, je peux aussi rappeler que le règlement visa demande explicitement que la Commission européenne prenne en compte les conséquences possibles pour les relations extérieures de l'Union européenne et pour tous les citoyens européens avant l'adoption d'un acte délégué qu'il serait nécessaire dans ce cas-ci.
Merci. Y a-t-il d'autres questions pour Adalbert aujourd'hui sur les questions affaires intérieures? Je n'en vois pas et donc je passe la parole à Lionel.
Bonjour.
Bonjour.
Oui. Bonjour Eric. C'est une question à propos de la décision de la Cour de justice ce matin concernant la Pologne. Je voudrais savoir s'il y a une réaction de la Commission et surtout que la Cour est assez claire. Elle fait une véritable, dans le cadre d'un recours de juge à juge, hein, donc c'est toujours un peu compliqué, mais il y a une véritable leçon d'état de droit. Donc je voudrais savoir ce qu'en pense la Commission. Et puis justement, puisqu'il y a un véritable cours d'état de droit de la part de la Cour de Luxembourg, je voudrais savoir si la Commission va être décidée à agir justement contre les violations systémiques de l'état de droit en Pologne. Voilà, merci.
Merci. C'est une question préjudicielle, je crois. Christian.
Oui, c'est ça. Okay. The Commission takes note of the judgment of the Court of Justice in a preliminary ruling related to the nomination of judges to the Polish Supreme Court. The Court's judgment clarifies that successive amendments of the Polish law on the National Council of the Judiciary, which have the effect of removing effective judicial review of the decisions taken by the Council when proposing candidates for the office of judge at the Supreme Court, are liable to infringe EU law. It is now for the referring court to follow up on the judgment. If the referring court reaches the conclusion that the legislative amendments in question infringe EU law, it will be for that court, under the principle of primacy of EU law, to disapply those amendments and to apply instead the national provisions previously in force, while itself exercising the review envisaged by the latter provisions. The Commission will, of course, continue to monitor closely all rule of law developments in Poland, including implementation of judgments of the Court of Justice.
Oui, donc ça me permet quand même de rajouter que il me semble, Lionel, que la Commission a déjà pris toute une série d'initiatives dans le domaine de l'état de droit par rapport à la Pologne. Donc ce n'est pas comme si nous partons de zéro dans ce domaine.
Je peux peut-être ajouter que, comme tu sais, il y a plusieurs... alors, ce cas, c'est une question préliminaire, mais il y a bien sûr plusieurs cas que la Commission a apportés, si nous avons pensé ça nécessaire. Et le dernier était le cas concernant la loi judiciaire, où nous avons reçu la réponse de Pologne. Et nous analysons cette réponse et nous allons décider sur les prochains pas.
Merci. Y a-t-il d'autres questions sur l'état de droit dans les 3 minutes qui restent pour Christian aujourd'hui? Merci de garder votre main levée que si c'est pour Christian sur les questions état de droit, rule of law. Ekrem, you have a question for Christian on rule of law in the EU.
Non, c'était pour Peter Stan.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm afraid that today, ça ne sera pas possible. Y a-t-il d'autres questions pour Christian sur le sujet aujourd'hui? Griselda, tu as une question état de droit.
Merci, j'aurais pu la poser quand M. Reinders était là, mais je ne l'ai pas fait. Donc, Christian, je m'en excuse, je te la pose à toi. Est-ce que vous croyez que d'autres États, donc la réforme du Conseil général du pouvoir est en cours ou est sur la table, devrait prendre note de cette décision de la Cour de tribunal européen? Je pense à l'Espagne, bien sûr, dont vous avez parlé dans d'autres moments. Merci.
Oui, j'entends ce que tu dis, mais je pense que ce n'est pas pour moi de faire un commentaire sur le système en Espagne si on parle d'un cas qui est précisément concerne le système en Pologne aujourd'hui. On va analyser, bien sûr, en plus de détails ce jugement d'aujourd'hui.
Grisel, je crois quand même qu'un principe de base, c'est qu'un cas qui est porté devant un tribunal est toujours extrêmement spécifique et donc dépend des circonstances exactes du cas en question et qu'il faut donc toujours faire très attention avant de tirer des conclusions s'appliquant dans un autre contexte. Cela dit, nous avons déjà eu l'occasion ici sur le podium, par la voix de Christian, de faire part de notre position quant au cas espagnol. Merci, il est 13h. Nous allons donc clôturer ce rendez-vous de midi aujourd'hui et laisser la place à Madame Ferreira. Merci beaucoup de votre attention et à demain pour le compte-rendu du collège.